Good afternoon, members and members of the public. Welcome to this meeting of the Development Control and Regulatory Board. This is a public meeting and is being broadcast live via YouTube. Could I remind members to turn on their microphones when they're speaking and turn off when they're not speaking. Today, membership of the committee, it is as printed, there are no substitutes today. Item 1 then is the minutes of the last meeting. I propose that those minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of November 2022 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is everyone agreed with that? Okay. Thank you very much. Item 2, I have not received any questions from the public, members of the public. There are no urgent items on this agenda today. Item 4, I've not received any questions from members under Standing Order 7(3) and 7(5). Item number 5 then is, as I stated before, there are no urgent items. Item 6 is declaration of interest. It is noted that all members who are also members of parish, town and district liaison committees will have a personal interest in those applications which relate to areas covered by those authorities. Are there any further interests it's time to declare? Keith.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Obviously, item 9, I'm chairman of the parish council, which you've just mentioned, but we made a successful bid to the Mick George Community Fund several years ago for renovation of a playground, and they have operations in the Ellistown area. And Mick George also have made donations to the village Christmas lights in the last couple of years, but I come here with an open mind. Thank you.
So can I just clarify, you're not leaving the room for that agenda item, just declaring? Okay. Okay.
Yes, I need to declare an interest on item 11, page 92. That's a tree in adjacent to Trinity Church. The applicant is Ashby Town Council, which I'm a member. There are no further ones. We'll move on to item 7 then. I've not received any petitions under Standing Order 35. Moving on to item 8 then, which is the construction of Link Road at Barden A511. That's on pages 5 to 42. This report will be presented by Brian O'Donovan, and the applicant is registered also to speak, but first obviously we'll hear from Brian O'Donovan first. And Brian, would you like to present, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so the application in front of us now is for the construction of the Link Road extending southwards from the A511 Barden Road. It comprises approximately 450 metres of highway with a provision of shared foot cycleway, construction of a fourth arm on existing Barden Road, Stevenson Way roundabout junction, creation of an underbridge beneath the railway, diversion of existing public right-of-way, demolition of 4 houses along the south side of the A511, and associated drainage works, including a culvert through the railway embankment and balancing pond. The location is land to the south of the A511 Barden Road. So the application site, that the plan in front of you is a site location plan. The application site is located to the southeast of Colville Town Centre. It includes an area of approximately 8.53 hectares. The application site includes a linear row of residential properties along the southwestern section of Barden Road A511 at the roundabout junction between Barden Road and Stevenson Way, with Stevenson Way extending or travelling north of the application site. Adjacent to the eastern boundary of the application site is the residential development along John Cooper Way and Cave Crescent. To the southern part of the application site, it's mainly grassland, hedging, trees, and general soft landscaping. The southern section of the application site includes a Network Rail railway line on a raised embankment, and that cuts through the site in an east-west direction. The application site lies within an allocated area for housing development within the North West Leicestershire District Council local plan, which has been predicted to provide for a capacity of 3,500 dwellings. As is the case currently, there's ongoing residential development as identified on the plan in front of you to the south of the application site and to the southwest of the application site currently. On that plan, you can also see, just for reference point, the M1 to the southeast, approximately 4 miles away. The next plan, it's an aerial image. It's an aerial image of the site with the red line being indicative of the application site. Yeah, so the proposed development, it forms part of a wider Leicestershire. Apologies, can I just go back a slide there? Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, so on to the next one. Sorry, misread my slides. So yeah, this plan sort of expands upon the site location plan, just showing it in an aerial format. You can see here on the plan specifically that the 4 properties to be demolished are at that point of the roundabout junction. You can see there's an existing public right of way which begins at the start of, or at the southern edge of the A511 Barden Link Road and travels through the site in a southerly manner, passing through an existing pedestrian underbridge, which is marked on the plan as well, where the railway line existing pedestrian underbridge. Next one, please. This is an overview plan of the proposed development. The proposed development forms part of the wider Leicestershire County Council's A511 growth scheme and has long been part of both planning and strategic policies to link to the residential development to the south. The proposal will see the construction of a new highway that would run the north-south direction from the existing roundabout junction aforementioned, creating a fourth arm to that roundabout. The proposed link road would extend 450 metres in length from that southern section of Barden Road with a total carriageway width of 6.75 metres. The link road would extend southwards beyond the rear of the properties on this section of Barden Road and would link to the Spine Road being delivered as part of the Grange Road residential development. Just note that development, as far as our understanding is, that is commencing, is currently taking place. It's further to the south. The road, the Spine Road isn't ready as of yet to connect to that, but my understanding is the only parts of that development is underway. The proposed development also includes the creation of a 12-metre in length underbridge to enable the proposed road to pass beneath the existing operational railway line to the through the southern section of the site. This is proposed to be a 13-metre wide box-shaped structure, which would also facilitate the pedestrian and cycle users. The proposed development includes a shared cycleway and footway throughout the entirety of the highway. This is proposed to be 3 metres in width to both sides from the roundabout to the southern end of the pedestrian underbridge. To the south of that underbridge at that point, the 3 metre in width cycleway footway will continue on the eastern side, whilst the western side will be decreased to 2 metres in width to tie in with what is being provided for on the Spine Road by the southern development, or the development to the south. The existing N86 public right-of-way cuts through the site from the A511, as was shown on the previous aerial image. This is proposed to be diverted to facilitate a crossing at the new road. It's proposed to provide for an uncontrolled crossing with tactile paving at the location at which it will join with the new road. Information pertaining to highways design, safety, junction capacity assessments, traffic flow scenarios, road safety audit and sustainability have been submitted to support the application. This includes additional information that was requested by the local highway authority throughout the application process. The LHA have concluded that the proposed development would enable improvements to congestion as part of the wider A511 growth corridor scheme, as well as benefits to sustainable transport modes within the immediate vicinity of the scheme through the creation of the cycleway footway, which enables easier access to the town centre. We also deem that the impacts on highway safety would not be unacceptable, and when considered cumulatively, these would be not severe. based on the information provided, the development in highways terms is considered to adhere to national and local policies. Next slide. So this plan is the landscape design master plan, which shows a lot of the soft landscaping features on the application side. In terms of the proposed development, a biodiversity net gain report has been submitted. Based on the current plans for the application site, the proposed development is predicted to result in a net gain of 12.2% for area-based habitats, a net gain of almost 120% for hedgerow units, and a net gain of just under 2% for river units. All habitat scores adhere to the local requirement of conserving, restoring, or enhancing biodiversity. The proposal also provides for appropriate mitigation for impacts to mature plantation or secondary woodland and candidate local wildlife sites present on the site in the form of woodland and tree provision. The development also provides for a mitigation for the loss of a length of watercourse by means of enhancement of the northern section of the watercourse and the creation of a new length of ditch. The county ecologists have reviewed the proposal, and it's considered that the proposal would not have any unacceptable impacts upon relevant species, protected and non-protected, the candidate local wildlife sites, and provides for the requisite biodiversity net gain. In terms of general landscape considerations, the application has been accompanied by a landscape appraisal summary, which is undertaking full appraisal of the likely effects on the landscape character and visual amenity arising from the proposed development. LCC Landscape Architects have reviewed the proposal and all associated documents, and they've concluded that the proposal will not have a significant adverse impact on the landscape character or visual amenity, subject to conditions requiring the submission of a landscape management and maintenance plan. Given the siting of the proposed development and the surrounding characteristics of the application site, the proposed development has the potential to result in both beneficial and adverse traffic noise impacts. The noise impact assessment submitted as part of the application outlines the additional mitigation proposed to address the significant adverse effects predicted upon Bardon Way and John Cooper Way, the most sensitive receptors to the proposed development, and this through the installation of 1.8 metre high closed board environmental barriers. This would reduce the potential increase in traffic noise level upon the occupiers of the most sensitive properties, ensuring that the impacts are within acceptable levels. The Environmental Health Officer at North West Leicestershire District Council has reviewed the application, and they've outlined no concerns in relation to noise, vibration, air quality or contamination. Matters relating to flood risk, drainage, heritage, climate change, the existing railway operations have all been considered, and all impacts have been deemed to be within acceptable limits. In terms of physical structures that are proposed as part of the development, the underbridge is probably the sort of largest piece of physical infrastructure that would be most notable within the application site. This is proposed to be 12 metres in length. It enables obviously the connection of the road to travel underneath the operational railway line to the southern section of the application site. It is 13 metres in width. It will enable the continuation of pedestrian and cycle users under this carriageway, or under this underbridge, apologies. And a condition has been applied to ensure that materials and means of finish are provided for so that this can integrate and incorporate within the surrounding areas to the best that an underbridge can. In general, in wider amenity considerations, given the separation distance from both the underbridge and other features, the existing residential properties and non-residential uses, it's not considered that the proposed underbridge will cause any unacceptable impacts upon residential of neighbouring properties in relation to matters such as sunlight, daylight, being overbearing, etc. It's not considered that other associated works such as bollards, shared surfacing, lighting would cause any unacceptable impacts either upon the amenity of neighbouring residents. Given the detail provided in terms of lighting at this stage being somewhat light in terms of information, the condition is to be included to provide for these details to ensure that there is no harm upon the amenity or character of the area at a latter point. Therefore, it is considered that the proposed development will not create any unacceptable amenity concerns in relation to noise, vibration, air quality, contamination, sunlight, daylight and privacy, and will comply with local and national policy in that regard. Just a couple of photographs taken from the site area. The plan on the left is facing east towards the A511 Stevenson Way roundabout. That's from the Colville town centre side of the roundabout. And the photograph to the right is facing towards the A511 Stevenson Way roundabout from the west, or apologies, from the east. The next photograph, that's approaching from Stevenson Way to the north, to the northern point of the application site. That's facing towards where the road will run through the southern part of the site and connect to the adjacent residential development. The properties in question to be demolished are at the end of that photograph. Here's a photograph just to the rear, having passed behind the properties along the rear of Bardon Link Road. One of those, or probably both photographs, are facing back towards the A511, facing north in the application site towards the rear of those existing properties. And the next photograph showed the existing public right-of-way that was mentioned previously. That initial photo on the left is from not too far from the rear of the boundary line of the properties along Boundary Road, and the next photo is the public right-of-way travelling through the pedestrian rail underpass. And the next photograph is just a picture taken from within the application site, facing towards some of the ongoing residential development to the southwest of the application site. In terms of other matters, an addendum report has been circulated, and just want to draw members' attention to one additional relevant planning permission to supplement the planning history section of the original report. This relates just to an adjacent, relates to the adjacent residential development to the south of the application site, which was originally granted planning permission under reference 12/00376/OUTM. That's referred to in the officer's report. Officers note that this application has subsequently been varied to take account of viability issues through application reference 16/01187 VCIM, and in accordance with section 106 agreements and section 278 agreements, which dealt with the Colville transport infrastructure package. This application, this is the one that acted in the area, and a press notice has been, a press notice was advertised in the local newspaper. Two objectors have provided comments. These concerns mainly related to highways and amenity. However, these comments have been considered. Full details of both objections and our consideration are included within the report. However, the harm is not deemed to have been unacceptable in relation to comments provided. Just to conclude, the proposed creation of the Bardon Link Road and associated development will be located within the Colville urban area and will create a link to the ongoing housing developments to the south of Bardon Road. This proposed link road has been a source of planning strategic policy aims for a significant amount of time, as can be seen from the numerous policies, assessments and strategic aims of both county and district councils, which are outlined in full detail in the report. The proposed development is intended to ease ongoing congestion in the immediate wider area, assist in unlocking ongoing and wider development potential to the south of the application site, and provide for improved sustainable methods of accessing Colville Town Centre. In terms of the loss of 4 dwellings, whilst this is regrettable in housing stock terms, the proposed development benefits in further unlocking development, whilst also providing for significant sustainability benefits. This outweighs any concerns in this regard, and North West Leicestershire District Council planning team have not raised any concerns in this regard. Thus, it's considered that there's an in-principle policy support for the principal application, whilst also material considerations are considered to be policy compliant. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Brian. That's very comprehensive indeed. We have a speaker this afternoon, Adam Gibbs. Adam, would you like to sit at one of these chairs over here? There is a button to press for the speaker. I don't know if you can see it or not. You've been allotted 2 minutes, Adam. So if you'd like to proceed when you're ready, and Ewan will time you, and obviously if you go over the time, he'll tell you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. As you've heard, the proposed link road being considered today will see the introduction of a new section of highway extending between the A511 Bardon Road roundabout with Stevenson's Way and the Spine Road being delivered as part of the residential development on Grange Road. In order for the link road to pass beneath an existing operational railway line located on the application site's southern side, a new 12-metre long underbridge will be constructed. The underbridge will be approximately 13 metres wide and allow for continuation of facilities for pedestrians and cyclists. As detailed within the application, the proposed link road will provide a number of environmental benefits, which include the introduction of a new shared footway cycleway, which will support the use of non-motorised modes, improvements to air quality through the easing of congestion within the local area, and enhancements to water quality through improvements to drainage. The scheme will also deliver an overall net gain in biodiversity, including mitigation to compensate for the loss of some trees and to ensure the inclusion of suitable habitats for bats and other protected species. The proposed link road forms an integral part of a wider package of highway improvements planned along the A511 and A50, also known as the A511 Growth Corridor. These wider improvements include upgrades at 9 locations, extending between the Huash roundabout to the northwest of Colville and the Fieldhead roundabout to the east of the M1. Collectively, these works have been designed to ultimately reduce congestion, improve journey times, and to support economic growth through the delivery of planned housing and employment sites. These works have been a long-standing aspiration for the Colville area and are well supported by local policy. The improvements, including the delivery of the Bardon Link Road, are being delivered through a combination of funding secured from the Department for Transport and private sector contributions secured via the Colville Contribution Strategy. Subject to securing the necessary approvals to progress the project, construction works were commenced in summer 2024 with a view to having all works along the A511 and A50 completed by mid-2026. Thank you.
Well done. Within the 2 minutes, I think.
Hang on.
Yep. Has any members got any questions for Adam? No? Okay, thanks, Adam. Questions for Brian? Craig, would you like to ask your question then, Craig?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Brian, for what was a really comprehensive report. Obviously, all the objections that were noted by the residents, in my opinion, have been thoroughly addressed. So I really welcome this development for Colville. As anybody who knows has travelled along the A511 on that particular stretch of road, the Bardon Road has been a real bottleneck and the root of nearly all the congestion issues for some time now, particularly with the development of the Botsway estate and even the Waterworks Road estate as well. So that's going to alleviate a lot of the problems locally. So I welcome this very much, and I move that we pass as required. Thank you.
Penis mustard, any Chair?
Yeah, yeah, I'm afraid we're looking for questions at this time, Craig, but that doesn't matter. Keith, have you got a question? Or?
Yes, I have, Chair. Thanks. I'd like to say thank you for the report, and I'll mirror everything what my colleague on the left has said. It's greatly needed as part of the Colville urban growth strategy. My question for the planners is, I put in 3 concerns. They've been addressed. I've had some great communication feedback from the team, and I would like to take up the offer to meet with the principal contractor as stated in the documentation. So great report. It's going to be obviously positive with biodiversity, reduced congestion. The parish council desperate for this link road to go ahead, and North West Leicester District Council growing, and they have been since it's been Conservative led. We've got a lot of B8 and residential development that's generated a lot of 106 monies that's been mentioned in the by the speaker at the front, and obviously the Department of Transport. So we're raring to go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Keith. Dan.
I'd just like to ask 3 questions.
Sorry, Dan, it is questions.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
3 questions. One's about the air quality. It's described as additional dust suppression measures to be implemented. I'd like to know about those. Also about the volume of traffic. You mentioned it would be 65,000, but you're talking of somebody turning up, but somebody has to turn out as well. So invariably, it's 130,384 movements across the year because the traffic has to come in and come out. So it's 2 lots of vehicle movements, isn't it? The third one is to deal with Historic England, and their comment is that they're concerned that you cannot demonstrate enough that they would be, they're not convinced of the restoration of the scheme when it's finished and the benefits. So, I mean, that's all in the report. There are more comments, Mr. Chairman, to ask. I presume there are simple answers to all of this.
I think you're on the next item, Dan.
I'll press the button.
Okay, I think you might be referring to the second report then, and we'll be more than happy to answer all of those questions. In fact, thank you very much for giving us forewarning of what they're going to be. It'll give us time to prepare for them.
Richard.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a very quick question. So the underpass under the railway, bear in mind I'm close to Hinckley and one of the most bashed bridges in Britain. I know we've got the length of the underpass as being 12 metres and the width of 13 metres. There's no specified height. Can you confirm that there is going to be more than adequate clearance for big HGVs, please? Thank you.
I do believe that there's actually a restriction on the tonnage that HGV shouldn't be using this route to begin with. There is a height. I'll just have a quick look to try and find the height. But as I said, I could be correct in saying that the tonnage restrictions here are to eliminate HGV usage along this route. 2 seconds.
Next speaker I've got is Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, really, on paragraph 65 and 66, the gentleman's just looking up tonnage. Does that apply just to the new corridor and not the existing Barden Road? Sorry, I'll switch off.
Sorry, just Oliver's checking your point at the moment. In terms of that, that's only in relation to the red line site, the application site. So that'd be that section of road. We can only condition in relation to that section of road that's in front of us. So from the roundabout junction at Stevenson Way A511 to the developer led road to the south.
So you, Chair, can I not then make a condition, a further condition, that the Barden Road has the additional weight limit as well? I mean, residents there have suffered long enough with noise pollution and because it's not in the red lines. Okay.
Neil.
I'll just I can go back.
Okay, I mean, to bear in mind weight limits, you're exempt if you're delivering within where the weight limit is anyway. And with sat-navs and foreign drivers, in Hinckley, our experiences, you can put up signs, you can put up barriers, and they still run into the dam bridge. So if they can get under it, that'd obviously be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Neil, you're in again.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for this comprehensive report. My question is in relation to drainage flood risk. Paragraph 100 in the report addresses this, but my question is more specific to the underbridge. Could you please clarify for me whether or not on the approach to the proposed underbridge there will be a slope down on the highway, and in times of heavy rainpour, is there a risk of any flooding at that point, or are you satisfied that there is sufficient drainage and culvert mitigation to alleviate any sort of flash flooding that might occur because the road does dip under the railway line?
Yeah, just in terms of obviously there is a sort of natural gradient as it stands at that point. in terms of drainage, I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen the associated or the attached comments from the lead local flood authority, but they've been very, very detailed in terms of their full assessment. So absolutely no concerns whatsoever has been raised in terms of potential flash flooding or water pooling in that area.
Thank you. If there's no more questions, we'll open for discussion now with members. Oh, did you want to speak now, Les? Yeah. Okay. On questions.
Thank you, Chair. It was just an observation. Can members and officers please make sure that their microphones are on when they're speaking? So I don't think on live stream people are able to hear us. Is that right, Ewan? Yeah, so could I just ask members to just be conscious of microphones? Thank you, Chair.
Well, I did say that at the start. Okay. So it's open to members. Craig, you started to speak before.
Turn your mic off, Chair. You settle.
We're going to have to get used to these new microphones, aren't we? So yeah, I am rather enthusiastic about this this whole development, as previously stated, as I am with the wider growth corridor improvements over the coming years. For such a long time now, it has been such a bottleneck. So it is my pleasure to put forward that we do propose that we do accept this proposal at the earliest opportunity. Thank you.
Present. Oh, I can't see the red light. Sorry. Chair, thank you very much. I'm even more enthusiastic than Councillor Smith because it's in my division and I can't wait for this to go ahead and for it to ease the congestion. And I suppose the majority of the residents of Ellistown and Hugglescote would be in the same opinion. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else wish to speak?
I'd like to formally second.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's been proposed and seconded. No one else seems to want to talk about this Warden Road, Link Road. So we'll put it to the vote then. All in favour of the proposal to grant permission for this. Please vote now. Anyone against? No. No abstentions? No.
Abstentions.
2 abstentions. Oh. Okay, well that's passed then. A great relief of people of Colville, I would think. Moving on to item 9 then. This is application by Mick George at Husbands Bosworth Quarry, Welford Road, Husbands Bosworth. Nick Bowden's going to present this report. Nick, where are you about? Oh, you're there. Right, would you like to crack on and present your report then, please, Nick? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. The application proposes the extraction of sand and gravel, importation of inert material and topsoil for restoration of the site, installation of concrete batching plant, placement of mineral washing plant, continued use of bagging plant at Husbands Bosworth Quarry. The application site is 50.7 hectares and comprises part of the existing wider Husbands Bosworth Quarry site and a proposed new extension to the east. Husbands Bosworth Quarry is an existing sand and gravel extraction site which has been operating to the south of the village of Husbands Bosworth and north of Welford since the 1980s. Slide behind. Let's go back one and I'll cut in halfway through so we get a bit of that. The wider Husbands Bosworth Quarry site beyond the application site comprises various areas of formerly extracted ground to the south of the application site and to the west of Welford Road. These areas are in various stages of having been restored or are in the process of ongoing restoration. The application site itself comprises an existing operational and working area, which has formerly had extraction completed, site office and administration area. To skip to the next one now, Oliver, and then keep track. Perfect, thank you.
The site is bisected by Butt Lane, a single-track bridleway which leads from Husbands Bosworth through the site towards a cluster of farm buildings at the south of the site. To the east of Butt Lane is an area of formerly worked quarry awaiting restoration, with the remainder extending to the north and east, comprising existing agricultural fields. Hedgerows cross the application site itself, which also features a few small copses and tree belts within it, including gravel pit spinney towards the centre of the site. The River Welland forms the southwest boundary to the site and is set at the bottom of the relatively narrow and shallow Welland Valley. The site falls within the open countryside, is an allocated sand and gravel extraction site in the Minerals and Waste Local Plan, and falls within flood zones 1 to 3, although the majority of the site is within flood zone 1 with the lowest probability of flooding. The site is to the south of the village of Husbands Bosworth and its conservation area, which includes a number of listed buildings, including Husbands Bosworth Hall and St Mary's Church, which are both Grade 2 star listed. The application proposes the extraction of 900,000 tonnes of sand and gravel over 8 years, with a maximum output of 200,000 tonnes per annum. The site would be backfilled with 1.3 million cubic metres of inert waste material. The site would be worked in an anti-clockwise direction, commencing with phase 1 to the east and finishing at phase 5 to the north. This would circle around Gravel Pit Spinney towards the centre of the site. Subsoil and topsoil mounds for the later restoration would be formed to the north of phase 1 and within restoration area A. Material will be processed in the mineral processing area to the west of the extraction site and transferred using tipper trucks. The mineral processing area would incorporate a processing plant for cleaning and screening material, ready-mix concrete plant, and the retention of the existing unauthorised bagging plant. The latter I will return to shortly. Combined operations from the sand and gravel extraction, bagging plant, and cement plant, including material imports to facilitate the production processes, will deliver 100,000 tonnes of processed material, 60,000 tonnes of ready-mix cement, and 70,000 tonnes aggregate bagged material, delivering a total average output from the site of around 230,000 tonnes per annum from the site. And the bagging plant and cement batching plant are shown in this particular plan here. Access to the site is via the existing haul road onto the A5199 Welford Road. This comprises a fully upgraded haul road, which is paved hard surface up to the weighbridge and wheel wash and mineral processing area. Principal routes to the site will be via the A5199 north to Husbands Bosworth, where most traffic will proceed west towards the M1. 1/4 of all traffic will travel east towards Market Harborough. Traffic to the south, also amounting to approximately 1/4, will travel towards the A519 to the A14 through Welford. The site will be restored during and after its operational lifespan using overburden, subsoil and topsoil material from the site, together with 1.3 million cubic metres of imported inert material and an additional amount of 25,000 cubic metres of imported topsoil. The indicative restoration scheme is shown, with key elements including the retention of Gravel Pit Spinney towards the centre of the quarry working area, introduction of broadleaf woodland to the south and west of Gravel Pit Spinney, with the western strip leading to the River Welland and the narrow valley and floodplain. There would be the introduction of a parkland area to the northeast corner of the site towards Bosworth Hall. To the east, a number of gravel pits would be retained, with small sections of open water and sand martin banks, together with the additional areas of broadleaf woodland planting. These slides show a series of photographic overview of the area, including this one, which shows the site access looking north towards Husbands Bosworth. This is a typical view of the worked area within the site, looking east of Butt Lane, in an area that is to be restored. This one shows the existing unauthorised bagging plant within the site. And here we've got an overview which is taken from the landscape and visual impact assessment submitted with the application. In terms of the planning planning merits even of the proposal. The site is allocated in the Minerals and Waste Plan for sand and gravel extraction and for restoration using imported inert waste as defined by policies M2 and W8 and under site allocation SA3. The local aggregates assessment identifies there will be a shortfall of sand and gravel reserves over the period to 2031, some 10.56 million tonnes. As such, the opportunity to secure 900,000 tonnes from this site is welcomed. Restoration of the site using imported inert material is also supported for this site under the site allocation SA3. The associated industrial uses, namely processing plant, cement batching plant and bagging plant, are also acceptable subject to them being in connection with current quarrying operations as provided for in policy M13. Members may recall that an application for the continued use of the bagging plant was refused permission in 2021 due to it being unrelated to any quarrying operations, conflicting with site restoration requirements, and a failure to demonstrate that the use would not be harmful to highway safety. The resumption of quarrying operations would place the bagging plant in compliance with the provisions of Policy M13, as the above use issues have been resolved through the implementation of quarrying operations and additional detail provided in this application. In terms of visual impacts, the landscape and visual impact assessment concludes that whilst there would be some temporary landscape and visual effects arising from the proposal, these effects would be temporary and experienced at a site level or in the site's immediate locality. Similar rationale applies to nearby heritage assets, which have no or very limited intervisibility. Historic England have raised concerns regarding the application, however have concluded there will be less than substantial harm from the development. This less than substantial harm has been balanced against the need for this type of mineral in the county, that this is an allocated site and that any harm to the historic setting would ultimately be temporary. Biodiversity issues have also been addressed in the application, with mitigations proposed throughout the life of the quarrying operations and enhancements on final restoration. The specifics of these elements are yet to be agreed, however the broad details shown in the restoration scheme are considered acceptable and indicate 31% biodiversity net gain by area and 142% increase in hedgerow. The site's relative isolation means that there are limited concerns regarding fugitive dust, which can be contained to the site with conditions on working operations. Noise exposure is shown on this plan, as shown there, with this extract being from phase 1 of extraction. This is likely to be the most intrusive due to its proximity to residential properties, but it maintains negligible noise impacts during normal operations. Traffic movements and quarrying operations would be restricted to 7 AM to 6 PM Mondays to Fridays and to 2 PM on Saturdays, with typical maximum movements shown above. As was shown on a previous slide, the balance of movements will be fairly evenly split across all 3 principal directions from the site. It is noted that the overwhelming majority of concerns expressed by local residents have been in relation to HGV traffic, particularly through Hosbans Bosworth and through Welford in Northamptonshire. These impacts should be distributed relatively evenly between these villages. Impacts have been further controlled by restricting the quarrying operations to daytime working only. Overall, the application represents the opportunity to provide additional sand and gravel resources on this allocated site, with adverse amenity impacts controlled as best possible. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, and including those conditions which were included in the amended report addendum to the main report. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nick. We have 2 speakers on this afternoon. The first one is John Goff, who's here for Mick George. John, would you like to sit in one of those chairs? Sit in one of those chairs there, look. And there is a button to press if you can see it. You've been allowed 2.5 minutes to speak, very precise. So if you'd like to start when you're ready, and Ewan will time you and tell you if you've gone over. Okay.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee.
You have before you a comprehensive report relating to the extraction of high quality sand and gravel from a site which is allocated within your adopted Minerals and Waste Local Plan. The 900,000 tonnes of aggregate will positively contribute to the county's mineral supply provision, where there is currently a shortfall of over 10 million tonnes. Mick George Limited are proposing to extract sand and gravel within an extension to the Husbands Bosworth quarry and restore the entire site close to pre-development contours using inert waste as the catalyst. Importantly, the project additionally seeks to offer significant landscape improvements to areas of Bosworth Estate by recreating the fabric of the late 19th century landscape. The restoration strategy for the Husbands Bosworth project has been considered from the outset to provide meaningful gains to the site's natural capital balance. The quarry will support local growth agenda and local construction sector. It will produce high quality minerals and a sustainable disposal point for inert construction waste. The clear recommendation for your professionally qualified planners is to approve the development, and I ask that recommendation is supported today. Proposed scheme of working will provide effective protection against unreasonable noise and dust. The site design carefully balances the protection of the local environment with a requirement to extract and process mineral and restore the land to a beneficial after-use in a progressive and timely manner. Importantly, the report committee confirms there is no conflict with any development plan policies. Given the predicted limited environmental impacts, compliance with the range of development plan policies and subsequent beneficial restoration proposals, then planning permission should not be withheld for the project. I therefore ask the officer recommendation is supported today. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Goff, you mentioned boosting the local employment, and I was just wondering, are you in a position to indicate any additional jobs that might be created by this application if it's approved?
The figure that's been referred to is we're close on 50. We've got a bagging plant, we've got a concrete batching plant, we've got the mineral extraction site, and we've got a fleet of HGVs parked on the site as well. So we're around the 50 mark.
Looks like there's no more questions for you, John. You're free to go. One further speaker this afternoon is Stephen Constable Maxwell. Stephen, are you here? Would you like to sit in one of the chairs? There's a button to press if you'd like to press it when you're ready to start speaking. You and we'll time you. It's 2.5 minutes, the same as Mr. Goff had. So begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Ewan, just before we start, can I just begin by just thanking you for considering this this application and for inviting me to speak, and Nick, thanks very much for all your hard work on that. Okay, I'm the landowner, and it's a privilege to have the opportunity to go through this restoration site. The quarry's been operating since about the 60s, and I regard myself as being custodian of this small piece of Leicestershire that, with your help, we can do something really amazing with. The biodiversity gain, it's mid-30s. I've got a figure of 33%, but it's somewhere around there. Mick George has said from the start that he wants to deliver an award-winning restoration scheme, and we've actually got the opportunity of powering the quarry with green electricity, which we're going to do. We're going to be returning 60 acres of unproductive scrubland back to agricultural lands, and I regard it as just responsible stewardship to take that opportunity and go ahead and do it. We're going to be reinstating the copses and hedgerows that were there in the maps my great-grandfathers in the 1890s. And contrary to the views of Historic England, there's going to be no loss of parkland. In fact, I'm continually building up the parkland from the main hall. The estate's going to be, the wider estate is going to be resown with lowland meadowgrass, which gives a much wider selection of seed and flowers, And ideally, my ambition is to see a return of turtle doves and English partridges, which used to breed on the land years ago. We carbon tested soil last year to establish a base value, and we're going to be regularly carbon testing soil going forward. We're going to be replacing all the single fence lines with hedges, which are going to be at least 3 meters wide to allow for wild grasses and biodiversity, and that's across the whole estate. From the house point of view, again, slightly contrary to historic England, the house has suffered from its Grade 2 listed, has suffered from chronic underinvestment over the last 60 years. Pipes are lead, electronics from 1940, heating system doesn't work, and there's asbestos just about everywhere. And this project is going to provide the funding to fully restore it. St Mary's Church, again, Historic England has made mention of the fact it's Grade 2 listed. It's a family church built by my great-grandfather in 1873, and it's been used every single Sunday, barring the COVID period, for a Sunday service. It's now the only church across the surrounding villages which has a regular Sunday service. The Mick George Charitable Foundation is making one sentence to go. Charitable donation, and it's one of the very few churches that remain unaltered since it was built in Victorian times. The project's going to ensure that that remains the case and the church able to continue to offer a regular Sunday service. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Anyone got a question? Dan. Dan would like to ask you a question, if you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the contrast then between your thoughts and Historic England? Because I was quite impressed with what you had to say, but I've got this script in front of me and their version of it. Could you elaborate a little further to give me a lot more comfort?
Okay, you're on a bit of a loose ball, that one, but I'll do the best I can. What I'm going to do is what I'm going to do. Oh, hang on, here comes John. Yeah, it's less than substantial level of harm to the setting and significance of Bosworth Hall and the Chapel of St Mary's. Well, I'm afraid if it's less than substantial level of harm, I mean, it's not the case. We've got Mick. I spoke to Mick on Monday, and he said, "Yeah, crack on, put an application in. I'm going to restore that church." And I had a meeting with the local priest, who is putting more and more time into it. We had 2 Sunday services there. It's the first time that's happened in a long time. The main house needs to be fully restored, and I'm not sure if Historic England were aware as the state of disrepair of the main house. I saw some of the wiring was a trench of wood with a bed of sand and a live cable running straight through the middle of it. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that I'm dealing with. So come and have a look. But I've got a massive job to do to make that place safe and secure it for the next 150 years. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed with your initial comments, but it's just how they are not convinced the restoration scheme would amount to a heritage benefit. And obviously it's in our documents, so it begs the question, doesn't it? But okay, I accept what you say. I don't want you to sweat any more on it. Yes.
Simply put, my builder came in and had a look at it. The front of the house is going to fall away, and the back of the house was also going to fall away, and the roof was leaking really badly, and it doesn't leak anymore, and that front isn't going to fall off anymore, and the back isn't going to fall off anymore. So as a first, that's my first 6 months work, and we haven't even got your approval yet. So if Historic England want to have a look around it, happy to show them, but you've also got a bit of a problem with asbestos there as well. So I'm not sure if they'd want to take up that offer. But if anybody wants to see it, they're very welcome to. But I care an awful lot about this, and it's such a great opportunity to turn it back to how it was when my great grandfather set up the park. I take seedlings from the trees that are currently there to keep the same genetic strains of the trees that are there at the moment. So when they go, we'll get the next batch in. You and I are still being timed?
No.
Great.
Questions? No, looks like you're free to go, Stephen. Thank you for the invitation. Anything from Mr. Payne, the board member?
No, I've not received any comments from Mr. Payne.
Okay, well, we're open to members then. In that case, I think. Keith.
Thank you, Chair. Again, very good report. Thank you very much. And I enjoyed the two speakers. We don't normally get speakers coming to these meetings, and it's nice for them to be here and face the panel. It says in the report, and it quite clearly says that it's for sand and gravel extraction, and we're very, very short of sand and gravel in the area. And basically, Northwest Leicester, we're building all of the time, and we've got a massive business rates pool because of the building programme, but we need sand and gravel, and I don't think we should be bringing it from down south. It should be coming from locally. So it gets my, it ticks the boxes for me, and I'm enjoyed the passionate speech there about the restoration of things and the seed storage and everything. So yeah, gets my support, Chair. Thank you.
Are you moving that, Keith? Or
happy to move that, Chair. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for the report. Very comprehensive. I'm just looking for reassurance and clarification, really. This has been to this meeting before and was refused. And I heard from the report about the bagging plant facility without any connection to any of the extraction connection was one of the reasons why it was refused. For a company like the applicant, as well as the quarrying, a hole in the ground is very valuable, and so I can see why they want the two together, because getting rid of waste in a hole in the ground is very profitable. But I didn't hear much about the two other points why it was refused last time, about the failure to restore the site, which I know we've had some glowing words, but it was refused last time on the failure to restore the site. And there was inadequate demonstration that the vehicle movements would not be harmful to highway safety. I'd just like some reassurance that those have been addressed by the application this time around, please. Thank you.
Nick, are you able to respond to Mr. Lovegrove, please? No? No?
Yes, thank you. You're quite correct to pick up on the issue with the bagging plant. Yeah, the provisions of M13 did justify its refusal on the previous round when this application was before members. In terms of the restoration, the bagging plant presently sits on an area that under, well, depending on the outcome of this meeting, prior to the end of this meeting, if the application is approved, is subject to a preceding restoration that should already have been implemented. If this scheme is permitted, that would amend that restoration scheme and implement effectively the current quarrying scheme, and then put the whole thing back by effectively 8 years or so. So it would then be restored following the completion of quarrying operations and the use of the bagging plant. So effectively the restoration scheme you see in front, or have seen in front of you before now, would be the one that should be subsequently implemented upon the completion of quarrying operations. Same applies to the other industrial elements, such as the cement plant and processing of mineral. In terms of the vehicle movements, the information that was provided as part of the bagging plant application, we had very, very little information in terms of what those vehicle movements were actually going to be. This application, as it's an environmental impact assessment application, has been submitted with a complete package of a complete transport assessment, which is detailed where traffic movements will be going, their relationship to previous movements on for the quarry on the local highway network, and it's assessed that in full, which wasn't done on the previous application. So as a consequence, our highway colleagues are now comfortable with that information that's been provided and are satisfied that even under the worst case scenarios, which are not likely to occur particularly often, that would be satisfactory in highway safety terms, both from the quarry and including the bagging plant and other industrial facilities on the site. Does that answer the question? Did I catch everything?
Thank you. That's very helpful. Reassured. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone, Les, did you want to speak? No. Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was just because I'm very keen on air quality, and I'm just very interested in the additional dust suppression measures will be implemented, but I don't know what that is. If I could understand that, I'd be very grateful.
Nick.
Yeah, we've got a variety of conditions relating to dust suppression, which include conditions 12, 26 and 27. Some of those, if I can quickly go back to what I found earlier, thanks to your slight heads up. Much appreciated to point out. Yes, particularly condition 12 actually reverts back. Is that the right word? It's not quite the right word. It cross-references the soil and soil management plan, which was included in as part of the application. That included a section on it on how materials would be handled within the site and how they would be dealt with particularly during dry conditions, how they would be managed within the site so as to ensure that there was no fugitive dust. That is then reinforced by conditions. So that document is available. It is part of the application material that's all part of this. Then there's also conditions 26 and 27, which is that if there are any issues of dust reaching neighbouring properties to a manner that's found to be unacceptable, then all site operations should cease until that is actually resolved in terms of whether conditions or working practices are resolved. So that should cover off those particular issues. Again, with condition 27, that relates to vehicles being securely sheeted, so there's no fugitive dust coming off the back of vehicles as they travel along the whole road within the site and onto the local highway network. I think as I have, I think this was put into the report, and I think also as I said when I did my little speech to start off with, the site is benefited to a reasonable extent, that it is reasonably well removed from local residential premises in the order of around about 200 metres to the nearest property, so even if there is some dust created by operations, the chances of it reaching nearby properties is moderately limited due to that reasonable separation and intervening space between. That covers things.
Thank you, Nick. Are you content with that then?
I am, because it is expressed a part concern, but my real concern is about lorries and the pollution from them, PM 2.5 from exhaust, tyres and brake systems. And obviously in the summertime, all vehicles are running air conditioning. In the winter, it's heat. So they pretty well run. And, you know, there are fumes that come out from it. Now, I'm not making a big thing of it, but I obviously concerned because obviously it's something that happens and that will sort of float 200-300 metres easily in the air. Thank you.
Neil.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I refer to paragraph 141 in the report? Because this is a concern that I have, and that is in relation to the representations that have been made by the residents of Welford that will continue to be impacted by the HGV movements through their village. It's accepted that the village is on a relatively narrow and constrained route, and it's not a route that is especially suitable for large HGVs. The report indicates these comments remain fair and are not an invalid observation. And I know that there's been campaigns locally in relation to the impact of the HGVs through the village, the impact on property, highway safety, air quality, and so forth. I can't really see a great deal within this report that addresses the any sort of traffic mitigation. I understand the reasons that makes that so difficult, because it is a strategic route that leads through to the A14 and beyond. But bearing in mind the concession that the observations being made by the residents of Welford are fair.
Nick, are you able to?
Thanks for your question. I've asked my colleague from Highways to come up to see if we can help with the answer to this question to a certain extent. The one thing I would flag is that, I mean, Welford, yes, I've been through it many times myself. It is a very constrained road. At the end of the day, though, unfortunately, it is an A road, which is part of the strategic road network. And there is a balance, if we were to say put a routing agreement into place for this site, all that would be done is that vehicles that would be going through Welford to the A14 would have to route through Husbands Bosworth. So they would be taking the traffic that would otherwise be going towards Welford and then being routed in some convoluted route, I assume, via the M1 or some other such route. I don't know, David, did you have any further comments to add on that?
I think I'd just reiterate what Nick had said about you'd have to look for alternative routes. I know Welford is in Northamptonshire, and my understanding that Northamptonshire Highway Authority didn't raise any particular concerns about routing through Welford, although they acknowledged it. They didn't insist that any further mitigation package was provided for Welford. Obviously, as Leicestershire County Council, our remit is Leicestershire Road, so we wouldn't be able to consider those as part of the wider Northamptonshire area or the impact on Welford. So I acknowledge your point, Councillor Bannister, but from our point of view, it was acceptable on the vote of Leicestershire.
Just one further comment I'd like to make is that any kind of additional mitigation measures that would be identified would have to meet the tests of being secured either through condition or through a Section 106, and those tests are being necessary. And this has been assessed both by LCC Highways and our neighbouring authorities Highways as being acceptable. So additional mitigation isn't necessary, and it wouldn't meet the tests to be required as part of this planning application.
Okay, then.
Well, just to come back very briefly, I wanted this, Ed. I appreciate we are Leicestershire, but Welford is very close to the border and is having an impact from this development if this development is to be approved. So I think it is appropriate that the comments are certainly raised, and just because there's a line on a map doesn't mean that we shouldn't address them. And I'm particularly concerned about those matters raised by the residents of Welford, but I'm balancing also the need for the sand and gravel extraction, the shortfall that there is, and the need for it. So on balance, these are all the factors that we have to take into account before we arrive at a decision. But nonetheless, I don't think we should proceed without at least acknowledging those concerns from the residents at Welford. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. Anyone else wish to speak? Richard.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank officers for their report and the gentleman for his very passionate speech about Husbands Bosworth Hall. maybe we can have the opportunity to see it when it's done. And just formally second the motion to approve, Chair.
Well, I've got a mover on this. No one else wishes to speak. Keith moved this. The seconder for this. Did you? I'm sorry, Richard. Okay.
The microphone's Chairman.
Ah, dear. That's let me think.
Chairman, can I just make a quick clarification?
If you'd like to, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make a very quick clarification before there's a move to vote, and that's in relation to the Grade 2 listed manor house and the church. And we've obviously heard in the speech that the landowner hopes to use money from this project to help restore those. I just wanted to clarify that there is nothing in this planning permission that would link funding from this to the restoration of those buildings. So it's not something that should be taken into account in the decision-making process.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. Right, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Nope. Oh, it looks like that's granted permission then to operate as requested. Right, moving on to item number 10. Delegated decisions issued the 1st of July 22 to the 31st of December 22. This is a report is to note, and if there are any questions, someone will endeavour to answer them. If not, can we accept that this is received and noted? Agreed? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item number 11, delegated decisions again for works to trees under tree preservation order. This is a report to note on if there are any questions on this item. Great, thank you. Item 12 is Chairman's announcements. I can announce that no enforcement notices were issued between the July the 22nd and December 22. The next meeting of the board will take place on the 16th of February 2023 at 2 o'clock. And with that, I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you for your contributions and helpfulness.